Human sacrifice aspect is alive and well in our society, I think.
It really is. It's just dressed up in a different way.
Nobody warned you. Nobody built up to it. That's just Mel Gibson on one of the biggest podcasts on the planet, casually describing human sacrifice as a current living industry practice. But that's not even the part that should scare you.
I've seen what they do. The ritualistic behaviors, the drugging, putting girls in the suitcases, dumping them in alleyways. It's horrifying. And it's all done under the protection of this is going to be paid off. There's another NDA.
That voice is describing what allegedly happened inside Epstein's network, not on some fringe blog, not in a Reddit thread, in testimony, in depositions, in documents that the Department of Justice has now confirmed are real. And according to Mel Gibson, two of the most beloved, most protected names in Hollywood weren't just connected to this network. They were participants.
The whole point of this, like Cat Williams said when he sat with Shay Shay earlier this year, the whole point of this is for them in a coordinated effort to pretend like none of it is real for the public's perception.
Tom Hanks, Oprah Winfrey, for decades, two of the most carefully constructed public images in entertainment history. But here's what nobody is connecting. The Epstein files didn't just surface random names. They surfaced a pattern. And when you overlay that pattern with what Mel Gibson has been saying, publicly, repeatedly, on record, the picture that emerges is something the mainstream press has refused to touch until now. Tom Hanks, 2 Academy Awards, Philadelphia, Forrest Gump, Cast Away. The man is essentially the personification of American decency. You grew up watching him. Your parents loved him. Your grandparents loved him. He is, by almost universal agreement, one of the most likable human beings to ever exist in public life. Oprah Winfrey, 35 years of daytime television. The woman who made entire book industries, who launched careers, ended careers, defined cultural moments. A billionaire, a philanthropist, someone who has positioned herself for literally decades as a champion for survivors of abuse, publicly sharing her own trauma to build trust with hundreds of millions of people. These are two of the most protected brands in the history of American entertainment, which is exactly why what Mel Gibson is now saying is so explosive. Because Gibson isn't some unknown internet user posting anonymous accusations. He's not a QAnon account with 1,000 followers. He is a 2-time Oscar winner, a director, a man who built one of the most commercially successful careers in Hollywood history before the industry turned on him completely. And his argument, the argument he's been building piece by piece across interviews, podcasts, and public statements, is that the same machine that destroyed his career is the same machine that has been protecting Tom Hanks and Oprah Winfrey for years. Let's go back to where this publicly started. January 2020, at the Golden Globes.
Shut up! I know he's your friend, but I don't care.
Ricky Gervais, standing on that stage, looking out at the most powerful room in Hollywood, dropping an Epstein joke, and the camera, almost like it was scripted, cut straight to Tom Hanks, jaw dropped, eyes wide, looking, in the words of everyone who saw it, like a man who desperately wanted to be somewhere else. Now, most people laughed and moved on. Gervais himself later said in a Yahoo Entertainment interview that he thought Tom was just uncomfortable with the boldness of it, that he wasn't used to someone saying that kind of thing in that room. He described Tom's reaction as someone who felt above it all, not someone who felt caught out. But here's the thing about that explanation. It requires you to believe that Tom Hanks, a man who has been attending these ceremonies for 40 years, who has seen Gervais host before, who knows exactly what Ricky does on that stage, was somehow caught off guard by an edgy joke. Or you believe what Mel Gibson is now suggesting, that Tom Hanks's reaction was the reaction of a man who understood exactly what was being said, and exactly why it was being said about him. Here's what the media wants you to forget about Mel Gibson. Before 2006, he was untouchable, Braveheart, Lethal Weapon, The Passion of the Christ, a film he independently financed that made over $600 million worldwide with zero studio support. He was one of the rare Hollywood figures who had built genuine independence. He didn't need the studios. He didn't need their money. He didn't need their protection. And then, according to Gibson himself and the people around him, that independence became a problem.
I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand.
Right.
and nobody was really bothering to explain it to me.
The 2006 Malibu incident. That's the official story of how Mel Gibson fell from grace. A traffic stop, an arrest, some ugly statements, and Hollywood closed its doors on him almost overnight. But Gibson's people, and Gibson himself in more recent years, have told a different version of that story. The version where the incident was less a cause and more a convenient excuse, where the real reason the industry turned on him was that he had started asking the wrong questions about the wrong people. By 2020, Gibson had quietly rebuilt enough of his career to get back in the room. But he wasn't playing by the old rules anymore. He started publicly supporting Sound of Freedom, the film about child trafficking that the mainstream press spent months trying to bury. He talked about it on podcasts. He endorsed it loudly and repeatedly. And then came the Joe Rogan interview.
Human sacrifice aspect is alive and well in our society, I think.
It really is. It's just dressed up in a different way.
That interview changed things, because Gibson wasn't speaking in vague terms. He wasn't talking about abstract evil. He was describing, with the specificity of someone who has seen the inside of the machine, a Hollywood culture built on ritualistic abuse, coordinated silence, and the systematic use of fame as both a weapon and a shield. And he started, carefully but unmistakably, pointing toward names. Tom Hanks, Oprah Winfrey, now. Before we go any further, we have to do something that most channels covering this story refuse to do. We have to be honest about what the Epstein files actually contain, because the gap between what the documents say and what people are claiming they say is enormous, and understanding that gap is actually the key to understanding why Gibson's specific allegations are so much more significant than the fake screenshots and fabricated lists that flooded social media in January 2026. When those 3.5 million pages dropped, posts immediately went viral claiming Tom Hanks was named throughout the documents. Screenshots everywhere, highlighted text, millions of shares. Snopes looked at it. PolitiFact looked at it. Deutsche Welle, one of the most credible news organizations in Europe, investigated it directly. Their conclusion was unambiguous. The screenshots were digitally manipulated. A Greek foreign minister that several posts reference doesn't exist. Claims that Tom's Greek citizenship was revoked because of Epstein connections. False. Tom Hanks is not in the verified Epstein documents. So why are we still talking about this? Because there's a difference between what the fabricated posts claimed and what Mel Gibson is actually alleging. The fake screenshots were amateur hour. Gibson's accusations are structural. They're about how the network operated, who provided social cover for it, and whose names were being used, and whose names were being protected. This is the framework Gibson keeps returning to. Epstein's most powerful asset wasn't his money. It wasn't the island. It wasn't even Ghislaine Maxwell. It was his ability to associate himself with globally recognized, universally trusted names. Names that made him seem legitimate. Names that made his victims feel safe. Names that made law enforcement hesitate. And when you start looking at who provided that kind of cover, whose brand was big enough, clean enough, and beloved enough to make Jeffrey Epstein seem like a respectable member of society, two names keep surfacing in Gibson's narrative. You already know who they are. Let's build the Tom Hanks case the way Gibson builds it, not with fake screenshots, with the documented pieces that, when you line them up, create a very specific shape. Piece 1. Isaac Cappy, 2018. A small-time actor, Thor, Breaking Bad, Terminator Salvation, goes on Alex Jones's platform and accuses Tom Hanks of being a pedophile. Live, on camera, no evidence presented, just a direct, named accusation. Now here's what most people focus on. Cappy had no proof. His mental health was deteriorating. He died in May 2019 when he forced himself off a bridge on Route 66. Authorities ruled it suicide. But Gibson's framing of the Cappy situation isn't about whether Cappy was right. It's about what happened after. Because within the Hollywood system, Gibson describes the mutual protection machine, the coordinated silence, the industry that actively punishes truth tellers. The response to Cappy's accusation was textbook. No legal action from Hanks. No public statement engaging with the substance. Just silence. And then the quiet amplification of the narrative that Cappy was mentally unstable.
Did they not sue him? Their response is to try to ignore it. They don't want to debate him on it. They don't want to do anything. No. They want to just ignore it and hope it goes away. But it doesn't go away. And
Piece 2. The Instagram photo. April 2019. Tom Hanks posts a picture of a rubber glove on the side of the road. Route 66, sign in the background. Caption, Historic Route 66, roadkill. I hope not. 1 month later, Isaac Cappy dies on Route 66. Now, and this matters, Tom Hanks has been posting photos of random lost objects for years. Gloves, single shoes, kids' toys. It's a documented, quirky habit that predates all of this by a long time. The photo almost certainly has no connection to Cappy's death. His son Chet had to post a video response because the harassment got so severe. Tom had to disable comments and tagging on his Instagram. But Gibson's argument isn't about the photo itself. It's about the pattern of behavior around it. Because in the system Gibson describes, powerful people don't threaten directly. They don't send emails or make phone calls. The communication happens through layers of deniability, through things that could always be explained away. Piece 3. The Greek citizenship, December 2019. The president of Greece personally signed citizenship for Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson. And yes, there are genuine, documented reasons. Rita is of Greek descent. Tom converted to Greek Orthodoxy in 1988. The Greek interior minister explicitly cited humanitarian work. But here's the timing that Gibson's circle keeps flagging. December 2019, 3 months before COVID hits, and right as the Epstein investigation is beginning to generate serious momentum toward additional document releases. Greece, historically, has complex extradition arrangements, and for someone who allegedly knew that documents were coming, getting a second citizenship in a country with deep personal ties isn't flight preparation, it's insurance. Gibson isn't claiming Tom fled, he's claiming Tom prepared. Now let's talk about Oprah, because Gibson's allegations here are, if anything, even more explosive, and they're grounded in something the public has already seen but hasn't fully processed. For years, Oprah presented herself as the ultimate ally of abuse survivors. She did the Weinstein coverage. She gave that speech at the Golden Globes in 2018, the one everyone shared, about truth and time and justice. She has built an entire public identity around being someone who stands with victims. And then people started looking at her friendships. Harvey Weinstein. Oprah didn't just know him. She was photographed with him repeatedly at industry events, at private dinners, in settings that made clear they were genuinely close. When Weinstein fell, Oprah had to very carefully distance herself from the relationship. She claimed she'd had no idea about his behavior. In an industry where Gibson claims everyone knows everything about everyone, the claim sits uncomfortably. John of God, the Brazilian spiritual healer who Oprah featured on her show and publicly endorsed. He later received a collective sentence of over 300 years for sexual abuse crimes. Oprah promoted him to her audience of tens of millions. And then there's the Epstein adjacent network. Gibson's specific claim, and this is the one that has been circulating in the spaces the mainstream press won't enter, is that Oprah's relationship with Epstein went beyond casual social overlap, that she was present at events connected to his operation, that she served, whether knowingly or not, as one of the most powerful legitimizing forces his network ever had. Because think about what Oprah's endorsement meant in the 1990s and 2000s. If Oprah was in the room, if Oprah was at the party, on the yacht, at the dinner, then the room was legitimate. Then the party was safe. Then the dinner was above board. Her presence was the ultimate social proof, and Epstein understood social proof better than almost anyone alive.
I've seen what they do. The ritualistic behaviors, the drugging, putting girls in suitcases, dumping them in alleyways. It's horrifying.
Gibson's claim about the island, Little St. James, the private property in the U.S. Virgin Islands that became Epstein's most infamous location, is that the gatherings there weren't just parties. They were something more organized, more deliberate, and that the presence of certain guests wasn't accidental. He has stopped short, in verified public statements, of naming Hanks and Oprah as having personally committed crimes on the island. What he has said, in the architecture of his public comments across multiple platforms, is that people in their tier of Hollywood fame knew what the island was, knew what happened there, and chose to maintain their proximity to Epstein anyway. Because proximity to Epstein, for the people in his innermost circle, wasn't a liability. It was leverage. It was the ultimate piece of mutual assured destruction in an industry built on everyone having dirt on everyone else. The files reveal clear tiers of association. There were people who flew on the planes, documented in manifest records, present at social events, part of the visible surface of Epstein's world. People like Naomi Campbell, Kevin Spacey, Chris Tucker. Their connections are verified. Their presence at certain events is on record. Then there were people like Bill Gates, whose relationship with Epstein was about leverage, about financial arrangements, about alleged extortion, about being drawn into the orbit through vulnerabilities that Epstein was expert at identifying and exploiting. And then there was a third tier, people whose names Epstein used as currency, whose reputations he invoked to make himself seem safe, legitimate, connected. Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Blanchett, names dropped during grooming sessions to convince young women that this man moved in the highest, most respectable circles. Gibson's allegation places Hanks and Oprah in a fourth tier that the public documents don't fully capture. Not just passengers, not just leverage targets, not just names being dropped, but active nodes in a network that understood what it was and chose to participate in maintaining it.
I believe that there are big realms of good and evil, and they're slugging it out.
What does the evil side want?
Oh, it wants you. He wants you.
And here's the thing about that fourth tier. The people in it had the most to lose if Epstein ever fully fell. Because unlike the passengers who could claim ignorance of what he was, unlike the leveraged targets who could claim victimhood, unlike the name-drop subjects who could credibly say they barely knew him, the people who actively maintained the network's social legitimacy knew exactly what they were protecting. That's Gibson's argument, and it's why, he says, the response to anyone who gets close to these names isn't legal action. It isn't denial. It's silence, discrediting, and if necessary, destruction. Tom Hanks is not in the verified Epstein documents. The fake screenshots were fabricated. The Greek citizenship has a real, documented humanitarian explanation. The Route 66 photo is almost certainly a coincidence. Isaac Cappy's accusations came with no evidence attached to them, and Oprah Winfrey has never been charged with anything. Her connections to Weinstein and John of God were embarrassing. But embarrassment isn't criminality. What Mel Gibson is doing, and what makes this different from the anonymous internet theories, is building a case not from documents, but from pattern, from behavior, from the architecture of how this industry has always operated, from his own first-hand experience of watching the machine destroy people who ask the wrong questions. Is he right? We don't know. The full picture of what happened inside Epstein's network is still emerging. There are documents that haven't been released, but what we do know is this. Every time someone with real proximity to Hollywood's inner circle, Gibson, Cat Williams, Jaguar Wright, starts talking, the industry's response follows the exact same playbook Gibson described. Silence, discrediting, the quiet closing of doors. Think about that. Drop what you think in the comments. And if this is the first time you're hearing Gibson's full case laid out, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because the conversation the mainstream press refuses to have is happening right here. Subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.